Hey guys, it's Kayla from Creative Drama. This is my lesson plan activity video for this class that we were supposed to do in class, but now I have to do a video because of coronavirus. But I will be explaining a lesson called Legs and Feet Alone. It's from page 137 of our book, and it actually has two parts. So this is Legs and Feet Alone number 1, and then there's a number 2 as well that I'll also kind of explain at the end. But it really has to do with saying yes and improv and definitely gestures. So this activity, saying yes, students really have to fully commit to the activity and just kind of go for it. It definitely has to deal with improv, because in this activity the teacher, or myself in this case, would be saying a command like out loud, and the students would have to respond with the gesture. So gestures, it definitely deals with expressive more than behavioral. We kind of talked about how behavioral is like everyday kind of gestures, but this activity is definitely expressive because it's teaching the students how to communicate without speaking and how to communicate with a certain part of their body. So like their elbows or their shoulders, and then definitely their feet and their legs. So I kind of modified this activity. It's called Feet and Legs Alone, but for the students that I was working with who aren't in creative drama, it kind of gave them a little bit more freedom to use different body parts. And it definitely, if you were doing this in a classroom, it would be able to give your students a little bit more of a varied activity, so not just doing the same thing with their feet and legs every single time. So it definitely adds to it by including other body parts. So every movement, gesture, body part, just without speaking. So that's the idea. So it has elements of saying yes, improv, gestures, and the last one is puppetry. So I don't know if we really talked about this in class, but the book talks about it. So this activity is from the book. It discusses it in the same chapter. It's from the puppetry chapter. So it discusses basically how the teacher will just say the command, and the students are kind of like the little puppets, and they are just going to do the activity, in this case on the grid. So basically being little puppets for the teachers, just kind of acting it out, essentially. So I will explain the game. So the number 1, the purpose of the first one is to discover all the possibilities of communicating without speaking. So using body parts, or one body part at a time, to communicate a certain emotion or response to a scenario. So the focus is basically showing who and what, or an emotion using the feet and legs alone, or in my case, whatever body part that I tell my students like they can use for that round, essentially. So how I would do this activity is, if I'm in my classroom, my students have probably been working with the grid and soft focus for a while. They're probably a little bit more comfortable with each other just because we've been doing these exercises. But essentially, just to start off as like a warm-up, I would have all my students line up, or get in a big circle around the class, all facing each other, just kind of like how we do for the tempo circle kind of things. But we're not going to do tempo circle. So my students would be in a big circle, and I would essentially explain the game to them, and I would say, we're going to be communicating with our body parts. We're not allowed to speak, so you're going to be conveying emotions with one body part that I will tell you the emotion, and the body part that you're going to use to convey that emotion. So just as kind of like a starter or an introduction to the activity, I would demonstrate. So for example, if I said, we are each going to feel anger in the small of your back, so like right in the bottom of your back, like right above your butt, that's what you are going to be using to convey anger. So then I would demonstrate and probably like tighten up my back or something like that. That's how I think how anger looks to me in that body part. So then your students would go around one by one, and they would all feel anger in the small of their back. So the idea is that your students probably won't all be communicating the same motion, because they all think differently. They're all on different levels of like expressing and being creative and things like that. So they probably won't all have the same thing. And it's a good check for understanding if they understand the rules of the game. And it's also good to see those students who might be struggling to think creatively, or just a little bit shyer, and just need a little bit more encouragement in that area, just to kind of go for it and just say yes to the activity. So I would do that circle as a warm-up. Everyone would go, and then you could also, just to make sure like your students are feeling comfortable and they fully understand the object of this game, you could have them go one by one in the circle and just pick one body part and one emotion and convey that emotion, and maybe like the class could guess what they were trying to do. So if I was like conveying happiness with my elbow, I'd probably be really happy, shake it around, something like that. And then I would have the class guess what emotion I was trying to convey with my elbow. So that's fun, get your students involved. It makes them feel like they have a part in the lesson, which they definitely do, but it just makes them feel a little bit more special about the activity before you do the actual activity. So moving on to the actual game, legs and feet alone, I would have the students get on the grid, maintain soft focus, just be walking around like we do. And then the purpose of the game is I will be shouting out different moods or emotions or scenarios and give the student that, and then I would give them the body part that they are going to express with. So for this activity, I thought it would be easier if I created kind of like a jar, or a bowl in this case, with different scenarios or emotions to pick them out, just so it's easier for me, and it keeps class moving, and it gets them, the faster we go through these, you know, the quicker they need to think. So it keeps them on their toes as well. You might have saw these yellow cards. I wrote cards out to keep my students engaged throughout the activity. So the first one is kind of like a pre-assessment. On a scale of 1 to 10, how difficult do you think this activity will be for you? So I'd probably do this after we do the circle activity, just to see how comfortable they are, or if they're still feeling a little bit uncomfortable with the activity. And some students are probably going to get a little frustrated with this activity. So just an encouragement, like if you can't think fast enough, react as best as you can. And if you need to, like include other body parts, just getting them a little bit more comfortable with the activity, really just trying to make sure that they are just really focusing on practicing saying yes and doing improv, things like that. Now at the end, I would ask them a scale of 1 to 10. What's your score now? How hard was it for you? Did it go up? Did it go down? Did it stay the same? Just see like their thought process throughout the entire thing. So that's the game. So I did this with some of my friends on campus, and so I had to do a little bit of work ahead of time to teach them like soft focus on the grid and things like that. So I did that kind of behind the scenes, but I'll put the video of our activity and then we'll do a little debrief.
Hey guys, so this is a demonstration of legs and feet alone, but like I said in the other part, we're going to be doing more than just your legs and feet, just for the purpose of this demonstration to make it a little more varied. So I have my bowl with my different scenarios on it, and this is my class, so they're going to help me demonstrate the game. So first we're going to circle up and do the first part of the activity, which is just the check to make sure everybody understands how the game works. So we're going to be communicating with parts of our bodies and not speaking, just to see how it goes. So the first one we're going to practice to check for understanding is feel the anger in the small of your back. So just this part right here. So I'm going to demonstrate first. So I interpret this as like, so scale of 1 to 10, how hard do you think this activity is going to be?
10, 7.
7, 6. Okay, so that was kind of like a pre-assessment, a little all over the place, but mostly hard for them. So, okay, go on the grid, walk around. Okay, the first one, feel sorrow in your feet. So what is that like? You can, sure, walk. how you felt on the first day of school with your legs.
It's a true story.
Demonstrate winning the lottery with your stomach. Feel happiness using your knees. Use your legs to communicate that you had a bad day. You just got an F on an exam. Feel that with your nose.
It's expected.
Feel joy in your thighs. Okay, here's a scenario. Your student debt just got erased. React with your elbows. Your student debt just got erased. What are you going to do? Feel sadness in your ankles. Hear your favorite song with your fingers.
Eee.
Someone cut you in the lunch line. React using your eyes. You just found out your sister is having a baby. React with your shoulders. Okay, you guys can exit the grid, so come back in our circle.
So first I want to hear which one was the hardest for you to do, if you can remember.
The thighs.
The thighs?
Yeah.
Why do you think that was hard?
It's like thighs, like you can't really move your thighs. It's not, I don't know, like a joint. Like you can move your
Right.
hips, you can move your knees, you can like semi-move your calves, but you can't really move your thighs. It's not really a movable muscle.
Okay, so now we're going to get everyone's post-assessment. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard do you think it was? But say your first score first.
I said a 7 first. I think doing it is probably just 5.
Okay, why?
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be harder, but it wasn't.
I started with 10 and it went down to like a 7 just because I'm not very good at thinking on the fly.
I originally started with 6. Wait, 10 is like hardest,
Hard.
right? Yeah. So I'm gonna change mine to a 9, just because I think it was hard to think about using different emotions in like parts of your body that you don't like,
Yeah.
I set a 7, and I think I'm gonna go with a 6.
So what are some of your like general reactions to this activity? And like how would you think this would be for elementary school kids?
At least for me, I feel like I would have been really comfortable doing it. At least like my personality, I'm like pretty outgoing, so like I don't know. I think it would have been fine. But I think it also, like looking in elementary, I think it really would help them put emotions with their body language and like connecting those two, because sometimes.
Thank you guys for participating, and thanks Ellie for recording. So now back to the debrief of my video. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video of my students. My friends looked like they had a lot of fun. There are other ways to make this more challenging for your students as well. So there's a part 2, like I said, in the book. So it's basically taking 2 students and they would have a conversation. I would give them a scenario like a mother and a child arguing, something like that, and they would have to communicate that with only their body parts back and forth. And then at the end you would kind of debrief, like where did you see the conversation going, what was the plot for you versus for you, so you could just see their thought process and how they interpreted the motions differently. So that's one way to make it a little bit more challenging and just to add to the activity, assuming that you're doing this activity with the cards periodically in your classroom as well. So that's my video. Thanks guys for watching. I hope you guys are all doing well. This has been a little weird for me, so I'm sure it's been a little strange for you guys as well. Just stay safe, and I hopefully will see you next year.